Hey, 8th honors class. We're looking at some of these homework review problems, the one that people didn't understand. So I'll go over them here. This is the first one, page 563, number 37. We got to figure out a way to solve for x here. There's two different ways we can do it. We can square root both sides at first, or we can divide each side by 4 at first. It doesn't matter. It'll work out the same both ways. Let's just, you know what, actually I want to divide by 4 first. I want to divide by 4 first. It'll be a little bit easier that way. So I'm going to divide by 4, and I'm going to divide by 4 here, which is the same as times 1 over 4, just so we don't have a compound fraction. 1 over 49 divided by 4 works out the same. So this cancels out. So we have x minus 2 quantity squared equals 1 over, what is it, 2 or 196. Now we want to get this x by itself. Looks like we have a square there, so we got to square root both sides. When we square root a variable, we're going to have to put a positive or negative in front of this guy. This is the same as the square root of 1 over the square root of 196. Here we have x minus 2 quantity squared now. Square root of 1 is 1. Square root of 196 is 14. So we have positive or negative 1 over 14. If we have x minus 2 quantity squared, or I'm sorry, we do not have the squared anymore because we square rooted it there. So we got rid of it. So now we have x minus 2 equals positive or negative 1 over 14. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. I'm going to put the 2 right here. It's easier to do it that way if we just put it in front of the plus minus. So we have x equals 2 plus or minus 1 over 14. So our two answers are 2 plus 1/14, which is 2 and 1/14, which is the same as 29 over 14. And then our second is 2 minus 1/14, which is 1 and 13/14, which is the same as 27 over 14. So our two answers here are x equals 29 over 14 or x equals 27 over 14. I'm going to put it in these. I know exactly how she wants it, but let's get familiar with set builder notation, I guess. That's number 37 on page 563. Number 41 on page 563. Some different ways we can do this one. I mean, any of these we can do them. We're going to end up being able to do them by factoring, by graphing even. If we wanted to graph this and find out where it crossed the x-axis, or completing the square, or the quadratic formula. We can do any method we want. Here, let's try to factor it. I'm going to factor out a 7. So, no, a 7a, excuse me. So I'm going to get a squared minus 25 equals 0. This is a difference of two perfect squares. So I get 7a, a plus 5, a minus 5 equals 0. So it looks like our three solutions here are going to be 0, because that's what makes that part equal 0. Here we're going to make that equal 0 with a negative 5, and here we're going to make this equal 0 with a positive 5. So our three possible answers here are 0, or negative 5, or positive 5. I'm wondering how else we could do that. That's by far the easiest way to do this one. You don't want to mess with completing the square when you have, well, you could complete the square in here. This is the easiest way to do this one. Finding out what the best way to do them is some of the hardest part of this chapter, but as long as you find a way that works, you should be good to go. In this case, it was easiest done by factoring, and I think this was the one before they even showed you completing the square, so it was the first of the two homework assignments. Here's number 45 on page 563, same page. Again, we haven't even learned completing the square yet, so they don't want us to do it. So what I'm going to have to do, the only method I have available to me is factoring. So I'm going to subtract 512x on both sides, get it equal to 0. That's our only choice when we have an x term and an x squared term. We can't just square root one side and make it positive or negative until we've worked everything out. So if it's like x squared equals 49, you can square root both sides and get positive or negative 7. You can't do that when you have an x here and then an x squared in the problem also. So we're going to have to factor this I'm going to pull out an 8x, and I'm left with x minus 64. I'm sorry, is this an x cubed to start the problem? Hold on 1 second here. Yeah, number 45 is 8x cubed, excuse me. So this is a cubed here and a cubed here. So when I pull out an x, I'm still going to have two x's in there, so we have a difference of two perfect squares. That equals 0. This again is a difference of two perfect squares, x plus 8, x minus 8. This is an 8x. What are the possible things we can use to make this equal 0? Well, we have that, it's got to equal 0. That would be negative 8, and this would be positive 8. So our three answers are 0, or negative 8, or positive 8. That's 563, number 45. Let's look at number 49. This was kind of an interesting one. I like it, and I want to go over it. Let's try numbers. Let's say if A is greater than 0, we're looking at A now. If A is greater than 0 and C is greater than 0, then let's sub in numbers. Let's say A equals 4 and C equals 1. Let's just try different things. So if A is 4, so we get 4x plus b squared equals 1. So I divide each side by 4, divide each side by 4. So I get x plus b quantity squared equals 1/4. So if I square root both sides, I get x plus b, I don't need those parentheses, but x plus b equals square root of 1/4. So again, we have to positive or negative. Square root of 1 over the square root of 4 is 1 over 2. Because again, square root of 1/4 is the same as the square root of 1 over the square root of 4. So it looks like we're going to have two solutions here. No matter what happens with b, when we subtract it, we're still going to have plus a half and then minus a half. So we're going to have two possible solutions there. What happens if we do this same problem? I'm going to use the bottom of this page for the next case. So here, what if A is less than 0 and A is less than 0 and C is less than 0 for this one. So for this one, I'm going to say A is negative 2, and I'll say C is negative 8. So I'm going to rewrite this as negative 2 equals, or I'm sorry, negative 2 quantity x plus b squared equals negative 8. So I divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, I get x plus b quantity squared equals 4, positive 4, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. If I square root this and I square root this, again I'm going to get x plus b equals positive or negative 2. So because they're both negative, those signs cancel out when we divide, and we get the same kind of deal as we had above. You're going to have two solutions. We're going to subtract b. Final answer is negative b plus or minus root 2 is going to equal x. Again, those are two solutions because there's a plus or minus.